Broadway production of Purpose, a new play by Brandon Jacobs Jenkins, the playwright of Appropriate. Directed by Felicia Rashad, it's about a political dynasty confronting lies, legacy, and redemption. Now playing at the Hayes Theater. Tickets at purposeonbroadway.com.
This is WNYC 93.9 FM and AM 820. NPR News and the New York Conversation.
Marketplace is supported by Bank of America. Bank of America is committed to helping businesses of all sizes make every move matter. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/banking for business.
I say this in the most macroeconomic and analytical way possible. What is happening? From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Solidigm. Today's AI ambitions require a different approach to storage. Solidigm offers solid-state storage solutions optimized for AI with higher capacities, greater speed, and energy efficiency. StorageForAI.com. And by Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, working to treat previously untreatable cancers through protein degradation, which can target cancer-causing proteins and destroy them from inside the cell. Learn more at danafarber.org/everywhere. And by Odoo, dedicated to providing software designed to scale with businesses. Odoo's programs for manufacturing, accounting, and more aim to provide building blocks for creating a custom software suite. Odoo, what small businesses need.
In Los Angeles, I'm Kai Rizdal. It is Wednesday today, the 5th of March. Good, as always, to have you along, everybody. While there is, of course, a limit to what government economic data can tell you, the federal statistical apparatus is the go-to for information on housing and the job market and inflation and much, much more. Data that helps people understand where the economy is and where it might be going, and data that informs business decisions and helps policymakers make policy. I say all that because the Commerce Department has disbanded two groups that help make sure the government's economic data paints a realistic picture of what is going on. The Federal Economic Statistics Advisory Committee and the Bureau of Economic Analysis Advisory Committee have been around for decades. Marketplace's Kaylee Wells explains what happens now that they're gone.
Erica Grosjean had no idea this was coming.
This came out of the blue. Nothing up until I got the email yesterday.
And she was on one of the committees. The economic advisor at Cornell University was told that the decades-old committee was getting disbanded because its purpose had been fulfilled.
You don't fulfill an ongoing mission by canceling this communication mechanism.
That mission? To get a bunch of experts at the top of their economic fields to help the government.
When the Bureau of Economic Analysis wants to develop a new methodology or maybe go into a new area where they haven't been before, they can run their ideas by the committee.
Retired economist and committee member Marshall Reinsdorf says advice was one major benefit. The other was government transparency. The committees opened their doors to the public.
It gives them a chance to reach out and get their message out to a broader community.
Getting rid of these two committees doesn't save much money, mainly because the members weren't getting paid, says former committee chair David Wilcox with Bloomberg Economics and the Peterson Institute for International Economics.
So we're talking about 8 plane tickets twice a year, one night at a non-fancy hotel. This was really inexpensive stuff.
And he says it was money well spent. Former committee chair Louise Shaner with the Brookings Institution says with less input, the data that the government gathers will get worse over time. And that data is supposed to provide answers on GDP and productivity and jobs and inflation.
Depending on what question you're asking, you're going to go to the data. And if the data are not good, your answers to those questions are also not going to be good.
Shaner says disbanding the committees was a mistake. We asked the government for a response, but the Bureau of Economic Analysis didn't provide a comment, and the Commerce Department didn't respond to our request. I'm Kaylee Wells for Marketplace.
One messes with economic data at one's peril. Wall Street today. What is happening indeed? As you've likely heard, President Trump has changed his mind on tariffs, kinda and only a little bit. Cars and trucks from Canada and Mexico get a reprieve, but only for a month. Traders, though, took the win where they could get it. Details, numbers, y'all know the drill. I will, in a couple of minutes, give you the yield on the 10-year Treasury note, as I do nearly every day, because the 10-year and the bond market generally can give you a good sense of what's going on in this economy. It's a benchmark that affects everything from how much you'll pay for a mortgage to a car loan to a business investment. A couple of weeks ago, we told you Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent had said he wants the yield on the 10-year to go down. And as of today, it's off more than a half a percentage point since mid-January, a pretty steep drop in a pretty short period of time.
Well, this is good news, bad news package.
Susan Wachter is a professor of real estate and finance at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. The good news is what happens to the overall cost of money, interest rates, when the 10-year yield drops.
Mortgage rates are declining substantially, and the reason they are is because the 10-year Treasury is declining as well.
Which, if you're trying to buy a house...
I, unlike my family members, have a very high interest rate on my mortgage.
Nicole Survey is an economist with Wells Fargo. For people like her who bought houses in the past couple of years with a plan to refinance or who maybe can't afford to buy in the current environment, rates coming down is a good thing. But the reasons that the rates are coming down really matter.
Do I think that the drivers of the 10-year Treasury yield today are what the administration would like to see? Likely not.
The drivers of that decline are where the bad news comes in. Here's Blarina Urucci, chief economist for T. Rowe Price.
One of the factors driving it lower is this growing uncertainty about the outlook for growth and this growing sense that a growth scare is emerging in the U.S. economy.
Tariffs, like April Hemmings was just talking about a couple of minutes ago, weakening consumer confidence as well, falling retail sales. All of those things could weigh on economic growth. Case in point, the Atlanta Fed's estimate of first quarter GDP that I think I mentioned the other day is the lowest it's been since early in the pandemic.
I think we're likely to get a few months of soft data, both in terms of how the economy is growing, but also how the labor market is doing.
Speaking of the labor market, jobs report on Friday. Not sure I've mentioned that.
So I think the growth scare narrative is partly driving the 10-year yields lower. Slower growth expectations mean that the Fed can cut or might be forced to cut interest rates down the road. I think that's definitely part of the story.
So, do Treasury yields coming down mean cheaper borrowing for households and businesses? Absolutely yes. However, could that also be a sign that the economy is weakening? Also, absolutely yes. Let's us do the numbers. Yeah, the really happy music today. Dow Industrial's up 485 points on that tariff news, 1.1%, 43,006. The NASDAQ added 267 points, 1.5%, 18,552. The S&P 500 climbed 64 points, 1.1%. 58 and 42. Ford Motor Company accelerated 5.8% today. Stellantis increased 9.2%. General Motors revved up 7.2% today. In earnings out today, Dine Brands Global, parent company of Applebee's and IHOP, reported slightly lower revenue than the same quarter last year, but still strong. Dine Brands gobbled up 3.4% today. Brinker International, which owns Chili's, chilled 1.5%. Cheesecake Factory dipped just a tad, 0.1%. Bonds fell, and thus, as promised, the yield on the 10-year T-note, 4.28%. You're listening to Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by NetSpy. Cyber threats evolve fast. NetSpy helps companies keep up. From pen testing to proactive security, and with clarity, speed, and scale, NetSpy helps protect some of the most trusted global brands at netspy.com. And by Progressive. Progressive Commercial Auto Insurance protects the cars, trucks, and vans that work to keep small businesses moving forward, including protection while running errands and other tasks. More at progressivecommercial.com. And by Betterment, the automated investing app that does the work, allowing people to focus on what matters most. Learn more at betterment.com. Investing involves risk.
I'm Brooke Gladstone from On the Media. And as you can deduce from the name of the show, we track the evolving media, the right and the wrong of it, across myriad platforms. But the truth is, the best thing about it, and I'm talking here about the fact-based media, the independent media, is that it's here at all. Over the 3 decades I've been watching, there have been countless bombardments and forays and brawls, but I've never seen it attacked with such focus and ferocity as now. Especially our own little corner of it, public media, your media, we hope. You know, you could stand up for public media right here at home. Start a monthly gift to WNYC or add to your existing one. Here's how you do it. Visit WNYC.org to help. And of course, thanks.
Call 888-376-9692. You can also go online to WNYC.org and click on donate. I'm Sean Carlson here with Steve Van Nessen. And, you know, Brooke is right. Like, if you've been following public media and you've been listening to public radio for years, or you watch PBS or whatnot, like, yeah, there have been other times where the federal funding for public media has been under threat, or it seemed like it might be. You know, you might remember when Mr. Rogers went to Washington, personal hero of mine, you know. So there have been moments where this has been a possibility, but this time it is different. This time it feels like a very distinct possibility, which is why the message of this fund drive is a little bit different. There's a little bit more urgency to it than you hear in pledge drives. And that's because, again, it is a distinct possibility. So what we're asking you to do right now to help offset the potential destabilization of this entire system is to step up and protect community radio in your community. Like, this is a conversation that's happening across organizations in public media across the country. This is the conversation that we're having with you because you are the listeners of this public radio station. What we're asking to do is to stand up and protect New York City public media. 888-376-9692 or WNYC.org.
And if you make a $12 a month contribution, we'll thank you with a super special pledge gift right now, the WNYC Blueprint t-shirt. It features the artwork of the 1937 WNYC AM transmitter blueprint. That's kind of a niche special thing. Like, when you're wearing that, people ask, what is that exactly?
Yeah.
And you can tell them you support public radio, you love WNYC, and this is some original artwork that represents sort of where we've come from. And quite frankly, we have another special gift that you will be entered in to win, a contest, the Empire State Building Tour. Again, this is for the real public radio super fan. You will get a tour of where the WNYC antenna is, led by WNYC's Chief Technology Officer, Steve Schultes. It's a really unique thing we're offering right now. It's just a great incentive. You love public radio. You want to show it. If you already make a contribution, you can increase your contribution. Is another great way to show your support of public radio right now at this crucial time. The number to call is 888-376-9692. You can do it at the website, WNYC.org.
Again, this is our winter pledge drive here at WNYC, and the message is different this time. It's more urgent than what you've heard in previous pledge drives. Again, because that federal funding is at risk, we are asking that you step up. And I like it, honestly, because, I mean, like is maybe a strong word, but what I do like about it is that it just reinforces what makes public radio great, right? Like, at the end of the day, funding from listeners is the largest source of funding here at WNYC. So I'm not afraid to say, hey, it is your turn now to step up if you haven't already, or maybe you are a sustaining member. Maybe it's time to kick that up by a few dollars, because that is really at the core of what we do. So I'm not afraid. I'm proud to ask that of you. And I hope you respond to that message, understand that that's not like an admonishment. It's encouraging you to support public radio in your community. 888-376-9692 or WNYC.org.
It's a great time to do it. And maybe you're new to the area. Maybe you've just discovered WNYC. Welcome. Hello. Mm-hmm. This is your local public radio station. We have a wide variety of news and entertainment shows, but most importantly, it is supported by you, the public. Just like in your hometown, same thing here. And it's made possible by listener support. So make a contribution now during this winter pledge drive. Thank you.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Rizdal. Painting in very broad strokes here, this economy has two distinct parts to it. The goods part, stuff that we make and sell and buy, and services, haircuts, your accountant, things like that. We gave you an update on the goods sector the other day, manufacturing specifically. That update was distinctly mixed. Today, the services sector, 2 surveys came out this morning, one from the Institute for Supply Management, ISM, the other from S&P Global. ISM showed growth. S&P Global, though, said services are worryingly weak. That's a quote. One sector, 2 surveys, 2 seemingly different outcomes. What gives, you ask? Here's Daniel Ackerman.
Here's what Steve Miller of ISM says about his group's optimistic survey.
It's some healthy improvement.
And here's what Chris Williamson of S&P Global says about his group's pessimistic survey.
It's now reporting the weakest output growth since November 2023.
There are a few things that could be causing this discrepancy, including who's answering the surveys. Gary Schlossberg with Wells Fargo Investment Institute says the ISM survey is mostly of corner office type purchasing and supply executives.
The SP Global number, they also survey people on the shop floor, so it's a little closer to the action.
Then there's the question of when you're surveying these people. The Glass Half Full ISM report allowed companies to respond throughout February. The Glass Half Empty S&P survey only took answers in the second half of the month, when markets were dropping and tariffs were looming.
Especially at times like this, things can look good early in the month and collapse late in the month.
So Schlossberg says once a month data drops aren't always enough to keep up.
It's for that reason we keep an eye on the high-frequency data to corroborate what we're seeing in the monthly numbers.
Data including weekly reports on retail sales and mortgage applications. There was at least one common thread between the 2 surveys, which Steve Miller of ISM and Chris Williamson of S&P Global both noted.
There's a lot of concern around potential tariff impact.
This tariff impact, what's that going to mean for us?
With those tariffs actually in effect now, next month's surveys could have answers everyone agrees on. I'm Daniel Ackerman for Marketplace.
It's been mostly lost in the tariff fire hose, but this is a big week for the labor market. The February jobs report comes on Friday. First-time claims for unemployment benefits are tomorrow. Remember, they were up a bunch last week. Today, the payroll processing company ADP said private sector hiring slowed to its lowest level since July and that small businesses cut jobs last month. Marketplace's Samantha Fields has more on that.
This week, Elizabeth Pancotti at the Groundwork Collaborative is not excited for Friday, Jobs Day.
I'm not expecting a rosy jobs report.
Recent federal layoffs aren't even the reason. It's too soon for most of them to show up. But all the data points coming out lately from ADP, unemployment claims, consumer sentiment surveys,
they are coming together to tell a similar story, that there is a considerable risk for softening in the labor market.
Some softening has already been showing up. Michelle Evermore at the National Academy of Social Insurance has been seeing it in one of the indicators she keeps tabs on, continued weekly unemployment claims.
That means people who are unemployed and continue to file claims after they become unemployed.
That number has been rising, which indicates it's getting harder for people who get laid off to find jobs. This cooling is partly something the Federal Reserve engineered, as it raised interest rates to try to bring inflation down and try to steer the economy to a soft landing.
And I think we kind of stuck the landing, but I think that there's been a lot of new uncertainty in the past month or two.
Almost every economist I've talked to lately has used that word, uncertainty. Guy Berger at the Burning Glass Institute says that's because
uncertainty is disruptive and it's very high right now.
For instance, are tariffs happening or not? Is billions in federal spending frozen or not?
We don't exactly know, even when policies are implemented, exactly how they're going to be implemented.
And if you're an employer, that's a tough landscape to operate in. Ron Hetrick at Lightcast says for many businesses, it's easier right now to just pause.
If you were a company and you were saying, I'm looking to expand or I'm looking to hire, you would have investors in those companies saying, are you crazy?
And saying, this is not the environment to do that in. I'm Samantha Fields for Marketplace.
One of the really interesting side effects of the pandemic, we're talking back in 2020, 2021 here, was the number of new businesses that people were starting. For more than 2 years, and this data is from the Census Bureau, what are formerly called business formations were off the charts. A lot of that was people having lost their old jobs or working from home with some extra, shall we say, time on their hands, or maybe just thinking about a different life they might want to live. Also, not to be forgotten, all that pandemic relief money floating around out there. You fast forward 5 years, most everything else in this economy is back to where it was in the before times, except for those new business applications. Entrepreneurs are still on a tear, and a lot of them are starting businesses that are adapted to post-pandemic realities. Marketplace's Justin Ho has more on that.
Joellen DiPacakibo is whipping up some drinks inside the coffee van she owns and operates in Ojai, California.
All right, here's the cinnamon oat matcha with honey.
DiPacakibo launched the business less than a year and a half ago after moving here with her wife and newborn from San Francisco, where she still owns a brick-and-mortar cafe called Pinhole Coffee. DiPacakibo says a big reason she decided to run her new business out of a van was to improve her work-life balance.
I could pop up whenever I want to and not have to open up every single day and still have time to be with my child.
Running it out of a van also helps DiPacakibo deal with a post-pandemic reality that's weighing on a lot of businesses: high costs. DiPacakibo says she pays her employees about $20 an hour, plus tips. And then there's the cost of milk and coffee beans. She says those pressures affect both of her businesses, but the van's overhead is much lower. It only has one full-time employee other than her, and she doesn't need to stockpile as many supplies.
I'm just buying less milk at a time, less disposables, less coffee. I could kind of order just what I need rather than things in bulk.
Meanwhile, in Cincinnati, Jordan Anthony Brown has been running a new business with much higher overhead. It's a sit-down restaurant called The Aperture.
We're settling into our identity a little bit and definitely more of upscale, casual, kind of bordering on fine dining in terms of price point.
Anthony Brown says he recently raised his prices from around $65 a person for dinner a year ago to $80 or $90 today. Part of that was to cover the rising costs of food and wages. But he says it also reflected another post-pandemic reality. People want a fine dining experience. Many of them are older, and they're comfortable paying those prices.
We have a lot of kind of business people come in, a lot of private bookings for business dinners that we're starting to see. And a lot of people in the neighborhood are definitely kind of in that 60, 70 range, and they just have more disposable income.
As a result, Anthony Brown says he's happy spending more on overhead. He's buying more expensive ingredients to justify his prices, and he says he's paying competitive wages, starting at $21 an hour. The goal is to make sure his 25 or so employees are happy.
It's the number one reason why we look to maintain a strong culture, because that trickles down. As the saying goes, happy employees make for, happy guests.
Other aspects of the post-pandemic economy have inspired entrepreneurs to start businesses.
I've been really inspired by what was happening in AI and then kind of found this application that I thought there was an opportunity for.
That's Sean Steigerwald. He started a software company a couple years ago called Customer IQ. It uses AI technology to help businesses record and summarize meetings, emails, and other forms of communication.
I did ask myself the question, fast forward 10, 15 years, do we have more online meetings or less? And I thought it was a pretty safe bet that we'd have the same or more.
Many of the economic challenges people have faced during and since the pandemic prompted Arya Jockin to start their company about a year and a half ago. It's called Make With Hardware and Learning Center in Portland, Oregon, and it teaches people a wide range of do-it-yourself skills.
We offer workshops on things like drywall repair, on refinishing furniture, sharpening knives, how to change a tire, how to change your oil.
The courses cost roughly $50 to $250. Jockin says learning these kinds of skills can be helpful for people who've struggled amid high inflation, economic uncertainty, and climate-related challenges, especially women, queer and trans folks, and people of color.
There are barriers in employment, there are barriers to housing, there are so many different kinds of barriers that folks are facing to gaining economic stability.
Jockin says if the business goes well, one day they hope to expand by opening a hardware store. I'm Justin Ho for Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Viking, dedicated to bringing travelers to the heart of each destination with small ship, river, ocean, and expedition voyages, offering cultural enrichment and immersive experiences. Discover more at Viking.com. And by Raymond James, a firm focused on transforming lives, businesses, and communities through tailored wealth management, banking, and capital markets solutions. Disclosures at RaymondJames.com.
This final note on the way out today. First of all, a hat tip to occasional guest on this program, Wendy Edelberg. The Fed's Beige Book came out today, 49 pages long. Tariffs mentioned 49 times. Uncertainty 45 times. Also, just to follow up from yesterday, if perhaps you took your time deciding whether to bid on almost 1.8 million square feet of office space in our nation's capital, too bad, so sad. The General Services Administration has now taken the J. Edgar Hoover Building, headquarters of the FBI, off its non-core property list. The Justice Department building and the Department of Agriculture, many others were on the list as well. All of them now, I guess, core properties? Don't know. Our immediate production team includes Brian Allison, Jake Cherry, Justin Dueller, Drew Johnstadt, Gary O'Keefe, Charlton Thorpe, Juan Carlos Tirado, and Becca Weinman. Jeff Peters is the manager of media production, and I'm Kai Risdall. We will see you tomorrow, everybody. This is APM.
I'm David Giambuso. I'm the breaking news editor in the WNYC